And I say good morning to Sandra Carvao, who is the Chief Market Intelligence and Competitiveness at the World Tourism Organization. Hola, Sandra, how are you?
Very good. Hola, Nils. Very good here in Madrid, where we sit as our headquarters, hoping to be able to travel soon around the world.
Aren't we all? Hashtag we will travel again.
We will.
Sandra, tell us a little bit about the World Tourism Organization. Many have heard of it, but it'll be good to know in a nutshell what you do.
Of course. Well, the World Tourism Organization is the specialized agency of the United Nations for tourism. So we're one of the 15 agencies, and our membership is the ministries of tourism of all around the world. So very much our work is into promoting sustainable, accessible tourism through strong policies, and that's our work with the ministries, and also through knowledge creation and advancing sustainability within the Sustainable Development Goals, which I always say, especially now in these times of challenges, we should never forget that we have a common objective towards 2030.
Talk about common objective. In discussions over the last few weeks, I gathered the feeling that there seems to be more of a sense of governments understanding the value of food. There were some aid packages that were negotiated in various nations, and it seems that people are starting to look up and say, "Whoa, we didn't realize this." And that would be one of the positives that, and I'm constantly looking for positives to get out of this crisis. But do you also get that sense that there is an increased awareness, because we've been battling, and I've been involved, you've been involved for so many years, and we battle, we try to sort of make them realize. Is that changing?
Well, I think it is. It's been progressive. I think it's a culmination of many years of the sector also showing its value. We always say that one of our challenges is always to mainstream tourism in the policy agenda, for one reason, because I think it's a transversal sector, so it touches so many points that people sometimes see it very fragmented. So it's difficult, when you talk about the automotive industry, then okay, there's 5 players and those players can have a strong voice. I think tourism, given that it touches so many of our points in life, still is seen by many as something that develops by itself, so it doesn't need support in a sense. And I think it's probably because the sector has been growing at a very strong pace during the last 10 years. We've gone through 10 years of sustained growth after the financial crisis. And now suddenly that we have 100% of the world destinations with some kind of travel restriction, people are seeing that if hotels are closed, if airlines are on the ground, then all the value chain is not working. It's the restaurant, it's the people that serve in the restaurant, but also the food providers to the restaurant. It's the taxi drivers, it's the shops, and there's a whole multiplier effect that tourism has that obviously, unfortunately, has been on a standstill during the last 2 months in many countries. And I think also it's a labor-intensive sector. So when you talk about the impact on jobs, obviously other sectors are affected, but probably we're among one of the most affected sectors.
And labor is in many regions of the world. I mean, I live in Africa, in the top of Africa, I always say, if you turn it around, in Cape Town. But if you look at the rest of the continent and South Africa as well, I mean, unemployment, a growing youth and whatever. In Asia, the same story. I mean, employment is really where it's at, and if our industry can provide that, it needs to be supported. The last few months have turned our lives upside down, and as we're saying, tourism was majorly affected. If you had to take a snapshot, if you had to sort of say, where are we right now, and where we moving? What is the current status from your perspective, and where do you think we're going?
Well, I think it's a very volatile situation, and I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges, because obviously wherever we're going depends on how the pandemic evolves. And I think we've always have clear from the beginning that our biggest challenge is to make sure that we work towards curbing the effects of the pandemic. The health crisis is the priority, and obviously it has transformed into an economic and a social crisis in many countries. I think that if I look back 3 weeks back, I see more light now than I would see 3 weeks ago, and I think that we're in seeing positive signs. Although I think we have to be careful. Obviously, we know it's going to be gradual. We know it's going to be very diverse. Each world region, and within each world region, we'll see different paces of recovery. We saw that Asia obviously went through this challenge earlier in the year. So some countries have not went on a lockdown probably as strong as in Europe. In Europe, we're starting to see very good positive signs. Italy is opening borders on the 3rd of June. Spain just announced that from the beginning of July as well. So we're seeing other countries already, Germany and nearby countries. So I think we are seeing positive signs, which probably a month ago were not that clear. But we need to do it with a very high level of caution, obviously always taking into account the health situation. And I think the challenge now is reopening with the necessary protocols, reopening with cooperation and collaboration, because you know, government, private sector, local destinations, national destinations, they need to have in place a system that makes consumers confident that they can travel again. And I think this is probably one of the challenges in the reopening. But also we're seeing things like cancellation policies, which will probably be a big concern for most consumers. I think we've seen many operators and hotel chains already taking that into consideration. And obviously also we know that domestic market, proximity market will be the first one to show signs of recovery. So there is a need to reorient some of the supply. And I think we need to also take into account that recovery might take some time, and we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Competitiveness is part of your portfolio, of part of what you do besides the market intelligence. We all, I think, agree that domestic tourism will be the one that is likely to recover first, then a bit more regional, and then hopefully, you know, being a long haul destination down here, you know, hopefully long haul as well very soon. Do you see an increased, I need to be careful here, I don't want to call it nationalistic approach, but a locals first? I hear some campaigns where people say, don't travel anywhere else, stay here because, you know, home is where the heart is, and whatever the thing. Do you see a drive towards that? And could it be positive? Could it be negative? Where do you see it?
Well, I think we will see it as a natural consequence of the reopening process. Most of the countries after the lockdown, the first areas they'll open is their domestic market. So you'll be able to travel within the country, maybe sometime before you're actually able to travel outside. So that's a natural consequence. Also, I think that we'll have to see, there's a lot of discussion on how will consumers' behavior change. And there's a lot of hints into, obviously, people will place bigger attention into safety and security. They'll want to feel in an environment that they feel they control. So domestically, you will feel somehow that you control better. I think there's also a concern which operators need to address, which is informing very well customers of what are their rights, and if they get sick during the travel, if they get sick at the destination, for example. So if you're in a domestic environment, you'll feel more comfortable because you control it. So I think it is natural that that will happen. We have seen that in previous crises as well. And then we can't forget that we might be facing a situation of economic downturn in many countries. Unemployment might be an issue. So domestic spending might be less expensive than going outside as well. I think there's a lot of factors that will contribute to the fact that domestic will be first. And I think it's natural that countries, knowing that, will want to stimulate domestic travel. There's already specific packages, for example, in Italy. There's a voucher scheme for families to travel within the country. Japan is doing the same. So we will see a marketing strategy that's oriented to the market that countries know will react more quicker.
Yeah, it's the low hanging fruit that we then look for. Silver linings. Where are we heading, or what are we taking with us that's positive out of this? We keep saying we've got 2 teenage daughters, and we say, you know what, 2020, you will never forget the year that wasn't. You'll never forget the summer holiday that wasn't, or in our case, the winter holiday. What will we remember positively, or is there something that we take out of this positively, which you see and have spoken to all your various ministers and across the world and whatever, you say, yep, that will be something which will last?
Well, I think there's one thing that was very clear that was already coming, and I think the crisis just will accelerate it, which is all the digital transformation that we were going through. And I think in tourism, many companies will now need to accelerate that transformation, but also countries. You know, one of my areas, as I was saying, is market intelligence, and data has become the gold in this era. And for example, we see that there is a big effort that still needs to be done in getting market intelligence systems in the countries, in the destinations, that allow you to see what is the impact of crisis, but also allows you to prepare further to see where the market will be developing, so that you actually orient your management towards those green shoots when they start appearing. Another point is we were having many discussions of tourism flows, so-called over-tourism in many destinations. So we do hope that this is also an opportunity to say we will, you know, start from zero and start with a different approach, which is, let's look into our destinations, let's establish carrying capacities, mechanisms of having people enjoying the destination, but the community benefiting from that, and not have communities having a negative impact on tourism. I think also we will probably see people being more aware of the importance of local values, in a sense, because we've been shut down in our houses and we want to reconnect with those values. So we do hope that this is an opportunity as well for governments, if they want to invest in infrastructure going forward, to incentivize the market to do so through green infrastructure. Because if we're building new, we should build properly. And I think there's an opportunity, and we can't forget that. We need to have that top of mind. I know that now the challenge is we need to get the business restarting. We need to get demand back. But I think it's very important to also prepare ourselves for the future, which is actually now, I think.
And to get it right. I think that's a wonderful way to close. Thank you so much. Let's get it right as we restart. Sandra Carvao, thank you very, very much. I'll let you go back to work for the world at the World Tourism Organization. Thank you, Sandra, and hope to speak to you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to be able to go around soon and visit you in South Africa.
Absolutely, for the first time. Thank you.